Hello, everyone. I'm Reverend Ted Gallardo from the Philippines, and this week's theme is paying attention. And I invite us to pay attention to something often overlooked and mistaken for a simple practice, and this is friendship. We are living in a time of reckoning, a time when the world is asking again what justice means. We often think the work of justice begins when something goes wrong, when laws are broken, when harm has already happened. But the work of justice does not begin or end with punishment and must persist long after reparations are made. Justice begins long before the breaking. Justice begins with friendship. Many of us cherish the story of the Edict of Torda of 1568, that remarkable moment in Transylvania when a ruler declared that communities could choose their own preachers, their own faith, and that faith would not be imposed by the sword. It is a story of courage, restraint, and law bending towards justice and conscience. I come to you from 7,641 islands of the Philippines where no such edict was ever written because it was never needed. I come from a country where our ancestors were of the land and of the sea. They carried what we call a bahala na spirit, not recklessness, but trust. A trust that life can move toward possibility. A trust that people can learn to live with one another even without rigid certainty. Because friendship accomplishes what laws and edicts alone cannot. In the Philippines, the law doesn't give ordinary citizens enough protection while granting impunity to transgressing lawmakers. Our Western-style institutions don't work for us the way our indigenous communities long have. These institutions are reactive, reductive, and redactive, and regressive. Friendship teaches us how to live with one another. A society shaped by fear learns obedience through penalties. After generations of such conditioning, people can forget how to live together when they don't have enforcement. It is tragic to prepare men for war and not for friendship. It is tragic when nations need monsters to defend them from colonizers. By then, it is already too late. It is tragic when machines are needed to create order. In parts of Bontoc province, elders have no word for rape. Not because people are incapable of wrongdoing, but because community bonds once made certain harms nearly unimaginable. The Mangyan community has no word for war. Their poetry speaks almost entirely of friendship, of the weather, of nature. They are talking about friendship, about meeting, missing, and celebrating one another. The Tiboli community has no word for stealing because what's yours is mine in their community. This is where I get my sense of justice. It's the millennials' culture of access rather than ownership. Caring for access to a home or a car rather than possessing them. Contrast this with the biblical story of the Israelites coming from Egypt, right? After generations of slavery in Egypt, so the story goes, they wandered the desert without a shared memory of freedom, having lost much of their sense of agency in ordering their own relationships. So chaos was inevitable, and it emerged. Moses descended with laws. He had to, not as ideals, but as reminders of the most basic conditions for living together. 10 Commandments became hundreds of laws. Law became necessary where relational memory had been broken. During the American colonization of the Philippines, Senator Spunner complained that Filipinos were not a governable people. Perhaps what he meant, without realizing it, was that imposed systems of control did not easily fit a culture organized less around law and more around kinship. In Filipino culture, we have a word, pakikipagkaibigan, the art of making friends. It means transforming strangers into kin. Its purpose is peace. Its purpose is security. Its purpose is the sacred moment when we can say, hindi na kami iba sa'yo. You are no longer other to us. And with that transformation comes responsibility. We will treat you like family, defend you like one, and protect you. And we expect the same. When harm happens, we respond as one would respond to a sibling, not through abandonment, but through community intervention. Western understanding reduces sometimes this process of brainstorming as gossip mongering. But it's not. We're trying to see how this transgression has impacted everyone socially. Psychologically, is everybody okay with what happened? For instance, somebody betrayed someone. You would think that it's a private sin, but in Catholic teaching, and this country is majority Catholic, every sin is a social sin and it has a social impact, right? So you become answerable to the whole. We never say it is not my labor to educate you. When we say education is a human right, we understand ourselves as both rights holders and duty bearers. We have the duty to bear, to educate as much as we can. Education is relational work. We educate by showing the social impact of one's decisions. See what happened? See how they hurt because of what you did. This is how we teach empathy. I was Western educated through faithful readings of Kant, Thoreau, Hume, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Emerson and Whitman, and others. And it was through these that I found my way to Unitarian Universalism in my early 40s. But still, I ask myself every day, did I need to be a UU? And honestly, I just had to be a Filipino first to learn that UUism is that way that we aspire to be. Even when I am abroad and I say, hey, I'm a UU, I am a Unitarian Universalist. What is that? But when I say, hey, I'm a Filipino, oh, Filipinos, hey. And then they start to treat me special. Once, an American invited me to Pacifica in California because it was Lunar New Year. And then there was a Japanese who was hosting an event. And then when they learned that I was a Filipino, they treated me so special. And the American was just like, what's happening? Suddenly the privilege was on me. It was so beautiful to see how a Western would be awoken by how Asians treat each other, in the best sense. And now at 56, I am only beginning to grasp how much my culture truly holds feelings with care. And most Asian cultures do. I have been acting shamefully for years, hurting feelings, like it's a hard habit to break because of my Western education. But I am learning that this sensibility does not mean being a doormat or a people pleaser. It means choosing the right forum, sometimes even orchestrating one, for people who are simply unaware. And that it's okay to hurt the feelings of the highly intentional bad guys, The Roman historian Tacitus once wrote, the more corrupt the state, the more numerous the laws. 600 years earlier, Lao Tzu said nearly the same thing. The more laws imposed, the more thieves appear. This was 600 years before the Western Tacitus. When trust declines, regulation multiplies. Western education taught me the Greek categories of love: eros, philia, agape, the works, like six love languages or something. But in my country, friendship is a love ecosystem. Our language carries an entire constellation of relationships. Pakikipagkapwa-tao is placing yourself within another's humanity. Karamay, one who stands beside you in hardship. Kapalagayang loob, one with whom you feel at ease. Kasama, a mutual witness to each other's lives. Kasangga, ally against adversity. Bayanihan, becoming heroes together for that someone who needs you. Kapwa, you in others, them in you. And many, many others. And our language assumes something radical, that no human life can be understood alone. Across religions, friendship emerges as a sacred calling beyond doctrine. Thich Nhat Hanh said, friendship may be more important than Buddhism itself, and he's a Buddhist guru. Islam honors the Sadiq, the true friend. And Jesus tells his disciples, I no longer call you servants, but friends. And so we arrive at my present ministry. I did not plan it, I stumbled into it. I found a small public park because my child needed sunlight and space to play. There were pigeons, vendors, laughter, ordinary life. Slowly it became our daily rhythm. Friendships formed, and from those friendships, a UU fellowship emerged, organically. Not from strategy, but from presence. Our toddler was someone who came to us shortly after the pandemic in November 2022. A second cousin of my partner. A year later, I relocated, recentering from the beach where we spent our COVID days to the cooler hills with clear rivers and spring water. Here, I found my kakilala, my kaibigan, my kasama. We were all recovering. Many were trapped in survival mode. Some earned $10 on a good day and nothing when rains came. So we gathered. We shared snacks. Children shared talents. We shared each other's children, the responsibility of keeping them on a daily basis. People showed up for one another. In that park, I discovered I was less a reverend than an eldest sister. And perhaps that is closer to what ministry has always meant. When siblings Louie and Dre lost their home to fire, we shared shelter, food, clothes, and spirits. We stayed when Mildred lost her child to suicide. We stayed beside her in grief. Merlin, a tailor, made my daughter school uniform for free from scraps, and she refuses payment. A 23-year-old single mother and her 2-year-old found refuge with us. They still live with us. Another single mother became less depressed after her husband abandoned her and their children because we housed them. We housed her when she was lonely. And now she's already on her own. All the toddlers in this fellowship agreed to be classmates. And their teacher noted how, whenever they see each other, these toddlers, they hug and say, I love you, I miss you, as though they haven't met in a year. And the teacher is so amazed at how much they love each other. This is ministry. Not programs, but proximity, not just on Sundays, but on life's rhythms. Believe me, we are full of complexity. Irritating things, pet peeves, failures of understanding. I have yelled. I have been yelled at. Nothing is professional here because there are no customers. So much free advice, right? Anyway, so much free advice on social media can be distilled as If they don't treat you as the best customer, leave, cut them off. This is how social media would advise you. If they don't treat you like the best, leave. And I feel like this is deeply imperial. The cost of perfectionism and consumerism can be a loss of authenticity and genuine connection. And I feel like there's a savior complex if you don't see that you are benefiting from not just being a minister, but being a friend and receiving things from them. When we cut off complexity, we become simple minded. It's like using AI to smooth out what is real. In our local fellowship, we are so real to each other while we care for the care. I have learned that helping others means knowing how to receive and not just give. Through their friendship, my family found more accessible housing, food, care, safety, and laughter. The grassroots know the greatest deals. Maybe this is why Jesus says in the Beatitudes, the poor shall inherit the earth. They just know the best deals. And that doesn't mean they have access to them, but they have the wisdom and the knowledge for those who can access them. So they can direct you. And so what I do is when I see that they need to be empowered with little loans, that's how I help. I provide them access to loans. So trust itself became our security system. Friendship became our infrastructure. Perhaps ministry has always been this, not managing belief, but cultivating belonging. A faith that cannot change how we live together is not a movement. It is only an idea, a hypothesis. A faith must be able to change how we live together. I hear that we UUs are still separating DEI from B, diversity, equity, and inclusion, from belonging. These are not separate concepts. Large corporations have already united them as DEIB. If theology is our stumbling block, let's kick its ass. Faith imposed by pressure becomes fear dressed as devotion. Faith born in friendship becomes practical freedom for growth. The world does not need more perfected doctrines. It needs communities where people feel relatable and related. Every time we transform a stranger into kin, every time we refuse indifference, every time we say, hindi ka nag-iisa, or you are not alone, we resist a world organized around separation. We change the human story into something more breathable. Friendship cannot be commanded. It can only be offered and received. So the question is not what we believe about love, but whether our lives make love believable. If someone entered our communities, our homes, our shared tables, would they encounter belonging? I wouldn't ask, would they encounter diversity, equity, and inclusion? I think they would ask if they belonged. Would our tables be large enough to be fearless against the unfamiliar? Ministry is the practice of making sure no one remains a stranger. More importantly, ministry is the practice of making sure no one has to fake who they are. And whenever strangers become kin, the sacred is already among us. May it be so.